Kati, how are you? I have heard that you are currently spending your mini sabbatical in between jobs before starting in your new position. How life has been the past week for you?
Thank you, Lili, and thanks for everybody for joining. It's amazing to hear. I heard that there are so many people here, also in Finland and outside. So welcome warmly to this afternoon. And thanks for asking, Lili. Yes, it's an extraordinary times for all of us in many different ways. Of course, I've been now almost 4 weeks at home. And of course, my children are also at home because the schools are not, well, they are working remotely. And then also my entrepreneur husband is at home. So it's a lot of people here, and it's extraordinary times. Also a lot of family time. Teenager might think it's a little bit too much family time, but I'm sure she'll get over it. And what I've been doing, sports, reading, reflecting, and to the horror of my teenagers, I've been cleaning up some cupboards. So I think they are as excited as I am to go back to work and start with Telia on Monday.
Oh, it's lovely to hear that you are starting soon and in your new exciting position. And I must ask, because of the current circumstances, we must reflect on the situation we are living in. What do you think after the pandemic period? What will be the new normal for us, the so-called new normal? Can we go back to our old routines, or is there anything that has changed for good?
Obviously, this is a big question that all of us are thinking on daily and nightly basis right now. And it's more about new now. It's like when we think about normal, it always reflects to something that would be status quo, or something that would be something that we can satisfy or trust on. And yes, we're having a big human health economical crisis right now, but there are also other crises. Last year there were many crises. We have big crises with climate. We have small economic crises everywhere, and they continue, unfortunately, is my understanding. And then it's a question of how we can always go on what is new now at the moment. And it's uncertain if there's going to be new normal, because we don't know anymore necessarily what the normal is or what it used to be. So I try to think like new now and taking as the things come. On the routines, I really like that you ask about that, because in the routines, we all need routines. We all need to feel that we can trust on something, and routines bring consistency, and consistency normally brings results when we are working in the businesses. And routines also bring kind of a security on people on continuing doing what they are doing. And therefore we need routines. But in the times of change, as we constantly live in, we need to constantly think that which routines are functioning, which ones we need to automate and put, for example, AI to work on those, or then which ones we need to iterate. And then there are routines that we need to keep, but we need to keep an open mind on to see which ones to change, but not to get completely rid of routines.
That's pretty interesting that you mentioned routines, and probably is one learning you are taking with you to your new role. And I wanted to a little bit ask around more, because you have such a versatile background and a vast experience in technology industry, platform business, marketing and digital operations, and as well as agency leadership. So what are can you even say, is there any key learnings, or what are the main learnings you are taking with you from this versatile background to your new role, starting as the VP, Head of Marketing and Analytics at Telia?
We learn, all of us, all the time. We learn in work, outside work, always. And then it's, of course, that what are the learnings that stick with us? And sometimes we as human beings, I don't think we always know what we learned before we actually need it. And then we notice, I learned this from here or here or here. Mm-hmm. And how we take those learnings into the use, it's always situational. that what are the needs of the current or the new environment where we are going to. And a couple of things, of course, are always like a very strong when going to the new position. For me right now, there are several, and of course I will listen to the teams and work together and see what is needed. But obviously, a couple of key elements there. One is the measurements and the goals and the targets. When we are in business environment, we really need to make sure we always know what are the goals. Are they monetary or some other measurement? But those are the key things. And the key element there is to over communicate what those are and have them aligned so that there are no sub-optimizing within the businesses. Then the power of execution. Ideas are great. We all love ideas. We all love innovation. That's all very necessary in any business. However, none of that actually brings results before they are implemented. And this is definitely a long time learning that will carry on always. Then it's of course about the people. We are, as we all know, living in very extraordinary times, and what are the needs of the people vary enormously. One cannot manage, whether that's marketing organization or data organization or sales or business or R&D or anything. One cannot just lead like one size fits all, one type of approach fits all, because people are having more and more individual needs, more and more different situations in life, and having that tying people's own motives, personal motives, and business KPIs and business goals, and how those can be merged, then I truly believe that businesses and people can prosper way better.
It's very interesting that you mentioned that it's all about a balance and finding the right balance between different perspectives. I loved when you mentioned learning, and this would take me to my other topic, because learning, I got sort of obviously one key or very hot topic in my mind, which is data-driven marketing, and I would love to pick your brain on it. And first of all, actually, how do you define data-driven marketing? And then how do you see the importance and value of data-driven marketing?
Yeah, let's go on the definition. I always like to talk also about data-driven business, not only marketing, because when you talk about data-driven marketing, you actually are looking at the bigger element, because you are impacting the way bigger things than just, let's say, for example, in the digital environment, to driving traffic to your application or to your website or any domain that you run. Now, when we think about data-driven marketing or sales or business in a bit wider terminology, it's about, first of all, in data, it's all about data ethics and data transparency. So we always need to start with that everybody is completely transparent and truthful how they define their own company's data ethics on the top of what is the regulatory GDPR and other requirements. So once there are data ethics, then it's obviously about what are your data samples, what are your data scope, how you collect the data, and how does the data flow, how you combine the data from different sources, because one source of data might have conflicting information to the other source of data. If you think about, for example, your digital or physical domains, or your phone service, or whatever business outlets you might have. Now, then of course, once you have all that, it's like, how do you make decisions based on data? And what are the key elements you select from data that you use based on decision? Because you can't have all the data before you make a decision. Otherwise, nobody would be making any decision at all. So you always need to have that human factor on the top of the data. But that's on the big decision. But if we then look at the data-driven marketing, then it's really about activation once you have all this foundation there. So you know how you're actually going to use the data to do what your marketing KPIs might be. So for example, if your marketing KPIs are to drive footprint to your stores or to traffic or to your websites or download your apps or just get clients to call you, you need to really set up the whole flow and see which one of those you can use with the machine learning and AI to find the audiences, or which ones you actually then are like selecting manually. But the key thing there is that you actually use the data to select your client communications, whichever format they go out to. Own media or paid media, doesn't matter, the same thing.
So what would be your advice, or is there even any like a short tips of the modern marketer, how to approach data-driven business?
First of all, learning. I mean, it's like really the key thing there. How people need to now go a little bit more in depth than perhaps ever before, and understanding that how the data is actually coming up to what are those data points that make a marketeer to make a decision. If you don't understand that, you're actually relying on other people and just the pieces of information. It's just the awareness. Which one of those are intuition decisions and which one of are data-driven decisions? And I think that's the key thing. And to be even able to explain to oneself, it takes a little bit of learning, and recognizing okay, this is a data-driven decision because we stack on this and this data and we took it this and this way, and here it's driven from, and it's valid and it's correct and it's ethical. And hey, then we have these ideas and people should be still continuing doing decisions on intuition, but then they shouldn't be calling it data-driven marketing. So a clear knowledge and awareness. I think that's the number one tip. And then the rest will pretty much follow.
Sort of to be mindful, what do you how do you utilize, and what is driving your decisions? Is it intuition or data?
Exactly. And then of course often it's both to a certain degree, but then one needs to be very transparent on okay, we have these data points when we develop these and these decisions, and then we feel like that this is, so it's like that everybody would know which decisions are data-driven and which decisions are just by gut feeling. And there is a time and place for both of them. But what I think is sometimes a mistake is that people say, oh, this is backed up by data, whereas actually it's mostly intuition.
And I really enjoy, I started to think of the routines you discussed at the beginning, and somehow I felt a nice connection that the routines are great, but sometimes there are so many new opportunities that we should never, especially in the data-driven business, we should never rely solely on our routines, but we have to always challenge ourselves to find the new opportunities.
Yeah.
Because probably there are so much more opportunities than before, and the old practices are something that needs to be reevaluated and constantly look for new available data sources.
Yeah, and it's that, but it's also like where you actually take the things that work. So when you find out the things that work in data-driven marketing or sales or in business in a large scale, you need to scale that, and then you need to scale that really fast. And then when you find out things, because data-driven work actually allows you to try a lot of new things. So one thing is not to go on this constant trying things and never scaling. So yes, trying, great, and we should all do that, and I encourage to do that because a lot of great innovation comes from there. But then it's also on deciding together and communicating the decisions clearly. It's like, okay, which one of those trials are going to let die, and which one of those trials, hey, let's scale this to the maximum and grow the business and serve the clients.
That's super interesting. And I'm just now thinking that we probably have a lot of creative listeners to this call, and I would love to pick your brains on sort of the creative aspect of this whole data-driven business, how creatives can utilize the opportunities of data?
This is such an interesting area. I think we could talk like 2 weeks about it, and would be amazing to hear creatives' viewpoints on this. From my personal experience and subjective viewpoint, I would kind of categorize it roughly to 3 different ways. One, and I'm going to be maybe a little bit provocative here. So one is like, there's a fantastic idea and we all love that. And then we seek for quotes and sentences from somewhere to support, and then we call it data. And I'm the first one to admit that, you know, I've been there, and we probably all have been there one way or the other. And then there are insights as a second category. So insights are not the same as data-driven. And I think it's very important that we all recognize that. So how do I define the difference? You probably wonder. So of course, insights, you have multiple different data sources. You have perhaps a longer period of time to create a more in-depth insight. You enrich the insight perhaps with the qualitative methodologies as well, to make it really rounded and to be also able to answer the question why. Because a lot of times like clean data-driven decision making is a what answer. Like what should be done? Okay, what sells, what doesn't sell, what resonates with clients, what doesn't. But the why element often comes more in-depth insight work. So my kind ask actually for the creatives is to consider like when to really be data-driven, because there are necessarily needs for that as well, and when are in a very solid way to be insight-driven, and when there's this nice to throw out some quotes from somewhere that might or might not be relevant to the topic.
So really understand the differences between data insights and
yes, and communicate and being, I think it's about transparency, and I think it's like it's about being transparent. It's like, okay, hey, now and it's completely okay if somebody says, hey, this is not data driven, this is by intuition, and you know, then that's it. And then if somebody says, hey, this is something else, this is very data driven, but no, we don't know why this is happening, but this is what seems to be happening because data says so. So it's about communicating what the ideas and decisions are based on. I think transparency is the key here.
Yeah, so the advice would be to all creative teams going to you and present that, make sure you know your insights, data or intuitions very well, and make sure you're not trying to mix and match them, but be clear about. So you might have a sharp eye when you see a creative presentation and see, okay, I see an insight here, but it doesn't really add up. Are you hard sort of, do you have, what's your practice when you see something a bit off?
Well, first of all, it's not about picking things at all. There's normally a common purpose, of course. When people meet, regardless of which side of the table they come from, whether they come from data side or creative side, or regardless of which company, or whether they're a small company, big company, freelancer or established brand, or in-house, outsourced, whatever role, obviously there's always a common goal. There has to be, because otherwise there's no reason to have a discussion. There's a common goal, and that's, again, I'm going back to the key learnings, that unless there are clear goals, whether that's quantitative preferably or qualitative, or often a combination of both, they need to be clear to everybody. And then from there is like, okay, what are we after, and in which time frame? And then it's kind of in a transparent, cooperative, and hopefully in a very lean, agile way, to be very transparent on what are the decisions that need to be data driven. For example, if you drive traffic to download your application or to convert to your business of selling XYZ, it's pretty data driven nowadays. It's very much AI driven, automated, highly advanced, automated in a way, and you just monitor. But then on the other hand, for example, if we take cases like now when the crisis started and a lot of brands responded, a lot of that was just about bringing empathy to the table and bringing common good sense on what world should do and what companies should do.
And so, I will definitely ask, I would love to ask that a bit later, because I still have a bit of a hot topic I want to ask and pick your brains, which is, we discussed a bit about data-driven business, and now we must talk about customer experience, because we know that this is a top agenda for all marketers. And what is your view? How do you see the importance of investing in customer experience?
Yeah, in the customer experience, obviously now more than ever, the hygiene factors are very key. People are living in extremely stressful. Many people are living in extremely stressful situations, emotionally, mentally, financially, in many different ways. And when brands and companies are serving people, on the experience becomes, people don't need any other burden that they already have in many cases. And therefore, the hygiene factors are super important. So yes, you need to have a very, very smooth customer experience, whether that's by phone or by physical appearance, if we do them anymore, and then or online or through big screen or small screen, any medium you have. And that's like key, like there's no compromise. There should be investments there. And if they haven't been investments, those companies are really in trouble right now, unfortunately. And a lot of companies are actually ramping up 3 years of development investments in like 3 weeks, almost, which actually is a good sign that things can be done very, very fast, also in the online world. Now, the second thing is about the delightful experiences, the surprises, the extras on the customer experiences. And obviously, both are needed, and it really depends on the brand and the starting point where they already are. Because if they have not been investing to the hygiene factors on smooth purchases, smooth deliveries, smooth customer service, anything related to the operations of getting a product or a service from A to B. If they haven't done that, I think, and this is just my personal, it's almost like not necessarily go to the delightful experiences, because you never get there because you pissed off the client already on the hygiene factors. Mm-hmm. So you need to build it up like a house. Start with the hygiene, make sure it's like 100% there, and then start building the differentiators that deliver the amazing delightfulness.
So if I hear you right, sort of this hygiene factor is a must-have, the baseline of delivering great customer experiences, and delight and all the memorable experiences are coming on top of these.
That's how I would like to see that from subjective point of view, and it's all, I think it's like exaggerated right now in the time of crisis, where people are quite demanding and quite constrained, both emotionally and financially. So, you know, the brands should think about how they can ease the lives, and having the hygiene factors top notch without any glitches would be the most logical way of approaching it.
Mm. And is it so that when you are changing the order and starting with the delight without having the hygienes, it can even turn against you because people just more.
That's a great question. You know, I actually had, and I'm not going to mention any company names here, but for me personally, I would say so. But then I do recognize that there are different kind of target groups as well, who might be just looking for the delights and who can then handle the burden of the not so smooth operations.
Mm. So it's hard to sort of say there's one truth for all.
It's a segment of one again. And here we go back to the being data driven, because how do you know? How do you able to? You can't have one service for all, because people are looking for different things and they are in different situations in their lives. So you need to automate a lot. Use machine learning, use AI, and actually use the data to serve the clients so that they feel it's a smooth operation.
Mm. I have a question here, and now it's probably a good moment to now also encourage all the participants to ask questions at the chat. And please make sure that you are leaving your questions as to all panelists and all attendees, so everybody can see them. One question from Daniel came that, do you have any method how to assess maturity of the companies from CX point of view? I don't know if there is any, should we go into the methodology, but sort of maybe if you want to reflect on how companies could think of their maturity from CX point of view.
So obviously there are a lot of companies, consulting companies who are, I'm sure they all have their own methodologies and wheels and charts to measure. Actually, some of those are from technology providers. Some of those are from agencies. Some of those are from big consultancy companies. I'm sure that in the online there are a lot of different ways to. Some of them are freely available to see that. Okay, how can the CX maturity be assessed? Obviously, I would go here, and those are useful, and I've used some of them in the past experience. But on the top of those, it's like again going back to the data, and it's like there's so much data also available in an ethical way that people should and brands should know their own clientele. And once they know their own clientele, they should be able to actually determine that what is good CX and what is not. And that's not an easy task. I know it from some of my earlier jobs, and it's not never ready. It's never ready. So it's a constant. We cannot say that, oh, this will be ready in 2022 or X, Y, Z. It's a constant thing, because people also evolve, and the methodologies how CX can be serving people actually evolve all the time. And that's constant change. So I don't have like one size fits all methodology for measuring it. It's more like look online, look at the companies, ask from real partners, but then also look at your own client data.
Yeah, rely on the own client data as well. Yeah. That's really insightful, not to have sort of one framework, but really assess it from a broader perspective. Really nice. Any other questions you want to ask? Now I don't see anything. And if you want to just ask a question by audio, you can raise your hand. There is an option in Zoom. Raise your hand and I can unmute the ones who would like to speak or ask a question in person. But I don't see anyone interested in that opportunity now. So maybe I give one couple of more seconds to gather your thoughts, dear participants. But I still have some questions I would love to ask. And I just quickly check. Oh no, there's one question before mine. So Essa is asking, Oh, sorry, this is not an ask. It's a sort of, I think, reflecting on Daniel's question. I think for start, you could ask your customers the level of your customer experience and even make comparison to your competitors. So it's just feedback or a thought from Esa. Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
And of course, for that to that, there are a lot of what Esa is probably reflecting is that there are a lot of methodologies to do that. Some of the well-known NPS scores, and then again, they are very important because they also give consistency. There's one consistent way of asking about the customer experience and how the customers are perceiving the customer experience, and those are comparable then between industries and competitors. But I think it's not enough. I think there needs to be also again going on reason why. And that takes a lot more also insightfulness to the customer data, but then also some qualitative and quantitative methods to kind of understand what are the causes and what are the effects. If you fix one thing in CX, will it cause something else in another point of the customer journey?
It's really interesting. So it's not enough if you just compare yourself to benchmarks and different companies, but we have to constantly iterate and see what actions change certain experience.
Yeah, because I mean, as we know, the customer experience is not one thing. Like I'm having one customer experience and that's it. So that would be just too easy for all the brands. But obviously it's a journey, and I know there are a lot of times, you know, marketers are mapping the customer journeys. And there are some commonalities, but then again, there are more and more different journeys, and where their people start or end their journey and what they do in between really varies. And now, when we gone to the whole societies have gone to the crisis mode, I bet those are different again, because there are external factors affecting our behavior, and those were like the early days when the current crisis started. There were really visible changes how people were behaving in online, and so you need to be constantly looking for that and constantly being able to like alter your CX according to the current, like I said in the beginning, it's about new now. It's not about new normal, because it's not a status quo.
Exactly.
So it's hard. It's hard. I'm not saying it's easy. It's hard, and we all need to be into that together.
Really, really interesting thoughts. And we see also nowadays, I mean, there's so many brands and companies are sort of mobilizing themselves and reacting on the change, and there are so many great examples. So did you notice any inspiring behaviors from brands and companies that could be benchmarked for all other marketers?
Obviously, there are many. This crisis has brought up a lot of different sides of companies, small and big. We've made a decision that I'm not going to say any brands here, but so I'm going to be speaking on generic terms. There are a couple of things. Obviously, the small companies right now with the entrepreneurs, a lot of people in crisis. A lot of businesses have pretty much died, at least temporarily, overnight, and there is like, it's a personal strategy for those entrepreneurs, and my heart goes out to all of those people. But it's also a like highly measuring. Okay, how do you react to that? There are great examples when small entrepreneurs have actually overnight, literally reinvented their business, like absolutely, both in hospitality or in restaurant businesses, or even beauty businesses or healthcare businesses, because a lot of things changed literally overnight. And there was not a scenario planning that could have tackled that. Is I think a reasonable way to say it. Now, then when we look at the big companies, obviously that's where there are a lot more money in the balance sheet, not a lot more money and the resources in the cash. So that's is like a lot of big companies should have a lot of more responsibility that just they own clients and they own customers and they own businesses. And I think a lot of great examples are where big companies have stepped up and stepped beyond what they normally do. They've given people things free. They've given products available that were not available before. There has been extended their own assets to the use of the less privileged companies. There has been reach out to public sector, reach out to the NGOs who are helping the people in challenges. So all those are just amazing brand builders right now, but it's all based on empathy. And the challenging thing, I think, will be that how will those companies and how will the consumers be actually, will that carry on to the increased sales later, or even not even increase, but even keeping the sales what they once perhaps were? Are those enough? And that none of us knows. And obviously big companies will continue to have a lot more responsibility on the society than before, and I think this crisis has showed that need for it. But then again, somebody in the companies needs to be also thinking is that, okay, how can they maintain their business so that they can keep the jobs? Because if the jobs are not being kept, then there's even more misery. And so it's a cycle that the companies need to really, and the brands figure out internally, but also how do they communicate it in the terms of communication, PR, marketing, consumer experience, and all those methodologies. It's an era where empathy and financial gains are hopefully not against each other, but hopefully coexisting.
Oh, that was a really, really nice summary of the whole good efforts of brands and businesses. And I think when you bring empathy to the forefront, it is clearly a big learning for all of us as leaders, as marketers, all of us as consumers, that empathy is a key component in today's challenging times. And the brands who stepped up are certainly building on empathy, and that's a key strategic element in all the actions.
Yeah, and exactly, Lili, and when you said strategic, because that's exactly what it is. And then the big question really is that how will those companies actually be able to translate then the empathy also to the sustainable business, that they will be able to be profitable? Because if the companies are not being profitable, there are no jobs. I mean, that's simple. And for the society to get back to the feet, we need jobs. We need jobs more than ever before, perhaps. And therefore, it's like how those two things coexist. That companies keep still, so that they can afford to empathy. Because it's unfortunate to see that some of the companies who I know from by their management, they would love to be empathetic, but they're simply in such a big cash crisis, laying off people, that they are just trying to keep it going so that they can actually invite people back to work. So these are not so. I'm not saying that empathy will save the world, but it's those who can do that, they absolutely should do that, and it should be a strategic priority towards the employees, but also towards the society, to the other companies, to the people, and to the NGOs. Very important.
I have one question from Sanna, and this relates to the empathy. And I must say it's a pretty big one. So I'm not sure we have time to answer within the last 4 minutes, but I still will ask. So how do you grow the role of empathy in teams and in organizations? And what are some concrete actions or internal sales arguments you recommend?
It's a long question. Can you say the first part?
How do you grow the role of empathy in teams and the organization? It's
listening. It's the word. I mean, a lot of times I think empathy is about how do we listen to the people and each other, and how do we then, when we listen, it's also about how do we take things forward, meaning things are taken forward when we are able to make decisions. So if we just keep listening, it becomes a chit chat, and then which is also important in these times that we all probably miss that. But then when we're looking at the business and how we're able to make sure that we are serving those customers in need with all those hygiene factors we talked about today, and can continue on the empathy to show also to the society, there needs to be a decisions, and there needs to be commitment to the decisions and going forward. And it's also about inclusiveness, how both introverts, extroverts, anything between, right-handed, left-handed, any genders. It's about how everybody feels that they have an equity to be participating.
Really, really. Thank you for this answer. I have one, Jaakko Isoniemi from Markkinointi Marmai, easier for me to pronounce, asking a question for you, Kati. How do you see the data, mainly customer data, gathered in this current situation? Is it applicable after the crisis is over, or should we treat it differently in some way, or perhaps even disregard it later? One question. And then his other question, are there perhaps some dangers that should be taken into account when using Corona time data in data-driven decision-making in the new now?
Okay. Thanks, Jaakko, for big questions. I appreciate that. First of all, whenever we talk about customer data or any data, let's remember the compliances. That's like absolutely non-negotiable. Crisis or no crisis, absolutely a necessary. GDPR compliance, all regulatory compliance is absolutely have to be compliant 100%. And I always say that the companies, in my opinion, should be going well above, not where it's just or the compliance, but going well above. Companies should have their own ethical data usage rules internally, and which are hopefully transparent externally as well, on the top of their regulatory compliance, so that the use of the data and the collection of the data is absolutely solid, trustworthy, anonymous, consent, and this list goes on and on and on. So that's number one thing for anything regarding data. Then of course, about the data is like, we have to remember that data collection is never a one-time thing, right? So it's like data is generated all the time. It's like sunshine, there's a lot of that, and if you look at it too closely, it burns you. But so you can't do that, and you shouldn't be doing that. But then it's not like disappearing. So there's always a new morning, in a way. So the data collection, of course, and this is a company-specific questions, and I don't know how each company should be doing that. But basically, once you have your ethical boundaries, it's like you constantly collect the data and you use that, whether you use that for short-term decision making or then whether you use that for long-term decision making. That's then a business scenario questions, as Jaakko was asking, that should that be used or not. Then, well, that's up to the companies. It's depending what their goals are and what they want to use that. But again, I would just very much remind on the data compliance and data ethics and data transparency and consent being the number one thing, whether crisis or no crisis.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions now, and we are just up in our time now. So maybe this is the right moment to thank you again, Kati, very much for this great session. And thank you for your time, and thank you for taking time for us from your mini sabbatical. And it was a lovely chat and lovely discussions, and certainly a lot of new perspectives. So people are saying, writing thank yous in the chat. So it's not my own thank you to you, but it's everybody's. All of the people are.
Thank you. My pleasure. I'm super excited to go back to business after a couple of weeks here, and then my regards to everybody. Please take care of yourself, your loved ones, and also about the impact that the businesses are having to the clients, customers, whether B2B or B2C, it doesn't matter, and the society. And let's all hope that there are a lot of jobs in Finland and elsewhere as well, because I think that's very important, that companies can continuously provide job opportunities for people to prosper. And take care.
Yes, take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.